Everyone, welcome to Wednesday. This is our time to do the weekly briefing. We do this every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Pacific. So if this is the first time you're coming, just set your alarm for next week at the same time and feel free to join us. We pulled these topics from many of the conversations we're having weekly with our clients or what you're posting on RevCommunity or on your social media. And often kind of like find patterns, and then Matt or I or anyone else in the team starts doing research to figure out what solutions people have or where the problems really exist. So this is just a fun time for us to gather the thoughts that we're hearing and put together some of this conversation. So I'll just start off with you, Matt. Welcome to Weekly Briefing. Thanks for joining me as always.
Good morning. Lovely to be here. So now when we're talking offensive sales tactics, we're not talking about insulting people, are we, Tim? It's like a sport.
Right.
It's like a sports thing.
Well, I don't know. Sporting people, they can be offensive as well as on the offense. Yeah, they can do a
True.
little bit of both, can't they?
There's a lot of psyching people out, but we're talking about people taking the front foot and rather than taking a defensive position, but actually trying to be more on the front foot, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. It's well, I hope that would be really great if some people showed up today thinking we're going to talk about offensive sales. That'd be pretty funny. Um, yeah, here's the thing. It's like I was texting with a friend of mine, who was pretty high Apple executive, for a few years, and he and I were just kind of going back and forth talking about like what's going on in the industry. And I said to him, more often than not, people are telling me that their clients are ghosting them. Like they just disappear. So he and I were going back and forth a little bit of like trying to diagnose what would cause that issue or what's really going on out there. And I even asked a question. It's happening so often. I've asked a question to myself, like, am I ghosting people? Am I in the same position and overwhelmed possibly? And other people would see what I'm doing as ghosting too. And so it's all, we're reading what's on the other side. Um, but it got me into the deeper conversations of like, well, what's the antidote? How do we really kind of get past these behaviors? Because it's hitting us really hard, isn't it? Like the sales projections, Matt, you know this. Sales
Yeah.
projections, sales leads, they're very hard to predict nowadays.
I've even been checking whether my computer's attached to the internet. Like sometimes you just get no response. Like there's no one getting back to you. Like I feel like I'm not actually got any bars.
Yeah, I personally had one where I'm doing this event in Milan. I reached out to somebody. They made a very strong recommendation. And I'm thinking about the process that they've gone through to reach out to find out more details, to get my email. They went through a few steps, and then once the initial introduction was made, and all I said was like, "Yeah, nice to meet you. What questions do you have?" I have not heard from them for 8 days, and I thought, like, what did I say? Like all the effort you did to get to this point, that the last step was it's very strange. And I asked that you said like one of your computers, and I'm like, I go like, did I actually send the email? Did I double check? Like I'm like trying to figure out the pieces. Um, but it's not just that, it's the entire buying behavior is getting people to commit. I've heard
Mm.
over and over again just the bidding process or the pitching process and going all the way through to a final and having the client say, we're putting this on pause for now.
Yeah.
Or we're going to find another 3 people to do it instead of the 3 people that just did it. And you're thinking, what? Wait a second. Why is that even an option? Why are we talking about bringing on other people?
Yeah, we've had a lot of people who don't actually even have the budget for the project yet, and they're really just calling around to find out how much it might hypothetically cost to use you to help them budget out their project so they could sell it in. And also they're busy. When we're in the office nowadays, it's not, no one's meeting for lunch. They are just slammed with the meetings when they are actually face to face. I really try to find what days they're working from home because you might have a better chance of actually
Yeah.
getting a conversation with them.
Well, what's funny is, and the reason why I kind of thought of the idea of like going on the offense here too is, our what we're used to is patterns, right? So we have a certain sales patterns where people reach out to us and we know our response, and we have this rapport that's very common, and we've practiced that and it's worked and it's repeatedly, and then that's what's not working. So I thought like, well, the difference might be to lean into something different. And
Yeah.
should try to find the right word of like, what is that word? Um, it started me thinking like strategically thinking about what the difference might need to be. And the offensive side of a sporting event is often the strategic side, right? It's the scoring side. Let's
Yeah.
do a series of plays or a series of motions, a series of actions. And when that didn't work, try a different series of actions. If that doesn't work, try a different series of actions. And that became like that offensive pattern of how do we keep on trying different patterns until we get the result.
Yep.
So what, like Matt, tell me one of the like, give me a simple pattern that you've tried in the past when it came to outreach. Like, where did you start? What's the like 3 or 4 steps that you could have easily expected to get a result from?
I would find a number of ad agencies that did similar work to what we were doing. I would then try to track down the creative director who was responsible for those jobs that I wish we got, and then I'd reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I love that thing you did. We do stuff like this. Maybe I could do this for you." And 3 times out of 10 that would work, because I mean, no one ever says anything nice to advertising people. They're really slammed. All they're hearing is, "You didn't win that award, you didn't get that project." And I found through a bit of like just simple flattery and respect, I'd get a response from people. But
Sure.
yeah.
And the response is often just like it, you actually basically start a conversation at that point with them. Thank you, Matt. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Here's what we've done. What kind of work do you do? And you can kind of get finally to, can I send you a reel? Can I
Yeah.
make a meeting with you?
And the ghosting would often happen at that point. Like you'd get past the niceties, and then when you come to say, "So, can I meet your head of production?" or "So, can we come in and show you stuff?" They go quiet.
Yeah. I'm wondering the same question. So I'll say like that's in the ask, right? So like
Yeah.
the conversation before the ask feels common and easy, but it's the minute you feel like you've asked them to commit back to you. Hey,
Yeah.
can you introduce me to your team? Can you give me your email address so I can send you that reel I've been talking about? Or, any of that part where you get to an ask, it feels like the conversation freezes. Now you're wondering what's happening on the other side. Um, yeah, I'll give you a pattern that I know a lot of people work with which is yeah, you have a body of clients you currently work with. That's usually your first line of offense, right? Like you say, hey, I actually need some work. I'm going to go back to people who have already worked with us. They've already used us. I'm already qualified. It was successful, whatever that stuff is. So it's your easy fit. It's the low hanging fruit. And so they simply just walk through their pattern and they say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? How are you doing? Well, that conversation just starts a trickle with understanding what projects you have in house or whatever is there. And then once you define the projects, the common way of doing it is to say, oh, that's really great. Have you seen our version of that? Have you seen our shoe spot or whatever? Here, I'll quickly send you a reel. You send the reel, and now crickets. And there's a lot of platforms you can see that the person played the reel or didn't play the reel. So this person uses Simian, they play the reel. They could see that some person watched the spots they wanted to. Again, no response. And so you wonder like, what just happened? Uh, and I have a theory that sometimes when you get to the ask today, that the rank and file that used to be there. So imagine whoever you were talking to, Matt, or whoever my client was talking to, they would say, "Oh, I saw this really great reel. I will go tell, my creative director. I'll go tell my whatever superior or whatever, our supervisor. Oh, I found this reel." And my thought is like that is what's broken. That creative director doesn't exist in the office. Doesn't so they're off location, or with layoffs, there's a disruption. So I don't know who to show it to. Thanks, Matt, for the reel. I don't know what to do with it anymore. And all of a sudden, the regular communication right there, it has some static in it and some friction, and so it takes longer or just disappears.
And so what would you say is a traditional defensive conversation? Like, okay, so to know what to do different, what do you think is the opposite of what we should do?
Well, so if I were to say the opposite of offense, right, I'd say like what I'm used to is like bouncing a ball against a wall and having it come back to me and I catch it. So what that pattern used to feel like is I could say something and then I would know that it would get me a return.
Yeah.
Hey Matt, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Great. Do you want to see my reel? I'd love to see the reel. And so that pattern, I could establish the pattern and always expect a return. And today, that somewhere in there, the return doesn't come. So I can't just wait for it to come back to me and catch it. I have to realize every time I pitch that idea forward, that ball forward, I actually have to know where I'm putting it. So, for example, the one I have where, hey, I sent the reel and it disappeared, maybe, right? Maybe it's because the person didn't know where to set that. I might need to understand, do some research and say, hey, I'll send you a reel. Can you give it to so and so in your organization? And actually make the request of where it goes next instead of leaving in the hands of the person who might not know, or that person that might exist. And if I don't know where it goes next, I would take a half a step back and ask a few more questions. Oh, I can send you the reel. Can you tell me who you're going to give it to after this? So that you almost understand that they have processed through of like, it's not just collecting things, but they have a need to pay it forward. I'll show it to the client. I'm going to show it to our creative team. I'm going to show it to, the other designers you're competing with. I don't know where it's going to go, but at least you have a sense of like, who am I making this reel for? Before, instead of just taking your static or standard thing off the shelf, brushing it off, putting a different title on it and sending it. I'd have to ask some more strategic questions.
Yeah, it's a bit like coding, isn't it? Like you've really got to couch all these, if not this, then that statements into your thinking so you kind of understand where it flows through to.
Yeah, it's why I called it in this concept, and I just posted an article on RevCommunity and LinkedIn about this too. I called it a relational based conversation. And I think we've used that relational based word, and I'm using it in the same context we always have, but more specifically, like recognizing the dialogue that's necessary.
Yeah.
So often, like, Matt, if I was going to ask you to dance, I'd have to like think through of like, the song is right. It's good country western music. It's line dancing. I know the line dance, whatever the thing is, right? I'd have to kind of understand some of it. So before I ask you to dance, at least I kind of know what's going to play. I don't know. That
Yeah,
might
you
be a
want to
really
wait for
bad
that.
example, but it was kind
Well,
of
you don't want to
funny
wait
when
for
it came
that
out of my mind.
that slow Patsy Cline number, because if you know some
Not for
fast
us, but
puts up a game, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Right. But it's maybe again bad example, but it's kind of funny as I was thinking about it. But at least you get the idea of like, I've put some thought into it before I get started. That's a kind of a relational or dialogue based approach where when we're often just transactional, right? Because why not? We're selling, they're buying, we make, they pay, like it's all very transactional. But I think if we maintain or push forward only transactionally, then you're really only asking them to accept or deny you. You're
Yeah.
not asking them to take another step forward. So I think the relational based thing is actually recognizing the need to get return dialogue or to have conversations through one person that are passed on to another and start thinking strategically, how does this sound when it moves up or moves through, or am I giving it to the right messenger to send to the right um, place? Those are, I have to actually start applying some strategy to this conversation.
Do you think people say too much too soon? Like they kind of blurt out everything in the first email and they don't leave anything for a follow up?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That to me is like, that's just the result of imposter syndrome. I'm so excited to have you. I don't ever really want to lose you. And so you want to prove so much so fast. And you really have to get to the point of realizing if that person reached out to you, you already are legitimate. You don't have to prove anything more. Just follow through in the most basic way, right? In the understanding way. And if you don't know why they reached out to you, you actually say to them, tell me more, or I don't understand, or give me some clarity. Like you can actually be relational and have a conversation with them instead of, yeah, that blurting it out. Because once it's all out on a page, you didn't really give me much more to go with, but to just read it and go,
Mhm.
okay, thanks. thanks for the information. And I don't want to just simply be informational. I want to be transformational. I want the conversation we have to make a change and have some impact in our conversation. So I need to actually, use the opportunity for dialogue to buy in.
Mm. Yeah, I was once trying this out on LinkedIn for some new person that contacted me. I thought, I'm actually going to try this. So I started just with that. He wanted to connect, and I just went, "Hey, how's it going?" And then he kind of got back to me and went, "Oh, like, oh, good, good." And then I actually got I got through to the fifth sort of back and forth, and then finally I was like, "We should meet up on coffee on Thursday." And I was like, "Oh, I raced it too much," but it was exciting, and I was getting very
Yeah.
high because suddenly I was doing it differently, and it was working.
Yeah. There's probably, I can even think of something more recently that's even kind of embarrassing because you just find somebody, you're like, you're the right person I need to tell this to. And then you just say it too soon. And I
Yeah.
have this saying, a general too far in front of his army is mistaken as an enemy. And what that means is like, I can be too far down the road. I'm 5 steps ahead of you having a conversation and pitching something to you. And it's awkward. The gap is very obvious and you mess it up. Don't you feel lucky when someone just shows you grace in that moment and actually, that you totally blow up, but they're kind of just like, are being kind of like, okay, I'll take your bait for a moment because I know you're a decent person, or I can kind of see that you have some credentials. No big deal.
Yep.
Yeah. The trick I think in this whole thing is like, how do we actually get to a point where the transactional desire we have has a place where we can put it into play, um, almost in practice. Um, and I often think of like, we don't often consider that as well. We are simply just moving on and we forget there are some very reliable people, some very obvious connections that we have that we can ask directly, what's going on over at your organization? Um, are we missing people? Like, what's it like to make a decision internally? And
Mm.
and begin with some honesty with, as you're even saying too, like the relational aspects of the trust that can be built up and follow through with that. So one example I have of that is, and again, I'm guilty of this kind of thing too, where I'd say like, "Hey Matt, I have a project for you. Um, would you be interested?" And that first thing I'm hit with, I just answer directly, "Yeah, of course. What's the project?" And we just keep it at the transactional level. Um, People are catching me nowadays, and I'll say like, "Hey, here's the thing. What are you interested in?" And they come back to me and they say, "First of all, Tim, how are you?"
Mm.
Which which stops me for a moment because I go, "Oh, right, I forgot to say hello."
Yeah,
Like
it's
I
so
just
simple.
skipped like, just like on Slack. I think Slack has got us always in the middle of the conversation. We don't have the like hi, we like email or whatever, or where we were taught in junior high to write letters. We're skipping all that. So we have these like so many conversations that are always in the middle. They don't have beginnings, that when we are working through transactions, we forget to start over and say, "Matt, it's been a while. Let me follow up with the last thing I know." And our CRMs used to have like people's birthdays in it and wives' names in it and kids' names in it and dogs' names in it and high school. And we used to be able to say, like, "Wow, those bulldogs did well." Like we used to do this little bit of like human banter before we jumped into it. And I think we're skipping that nowadays.
Yeah.
So one thing you can do is just do what people are doing to me, and just stop people before when they come at you transactionally, just take the moment and say, hey, Doug, it's really good to see you. I'm glad that, blah, blah, blah. And then tell me about the project you have going on,
Mm.
and begin the conversation that way. I think that's one tiny little trick, I think, that has caught me recognizing like, oh yeah, the relational aspect is important.
Being a human, it's underrated.
Speaking about humans and named Doug, I see Doug has his hand raised.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Thank you. I appreciate what you've been saying. I was wondering, you were talking about general, I hadn't heard this before. General being so far out in front of the army that they're taking for an. I never know the timing. Like I've actually made some very nice connections through this community and people talk to, and it's been very, very good to make friends. But I want clients, not just friends. And I never know when the right time, or to say, to even enter the conversation. How can I help you? Is it
Mhm.
without stepping on some sort of protocol? And it's probably just my, I think, imposter syndrome getting involved. But I'm wondering what you think about timing, both of you.
Yeah, timing is a good question, and I wonder if timing isn't also just part of technique. Matt and I are doing Matt's coming out with a new accelerator called Rekindle, and he and I are going through it together, walking through what the exercises are going to be. And the sixth lesson, is that what it was, Matt? The sixth lesson, or we talked about this a little bit, the
Yeah,
dialogue
yeah, all about
class.
dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, we were talking about the idea of, how can I get you,
Say
Doug?
dialogue.
Yeah, dialogue. Yeah, like
Okay,
conversation.
sure I
Yeah.
heard it right.
So the exercise we're working on is, how can I get you, Doug, to ask me the question I want you to ask me? Right. So it's not just like, can I ask you a question? How are you? You say fine. But how can I get you to ask me a question? Tim, what does RevThink do? That I'm like, oh, I would love to answer that question. So I have to get you to a point of curiosity that's finally a question you ask me that I can fill in that vacuum. So there's like a technique available to get into conversation that turns it into curiosity, which then turns it into the questions you want them to ask. So the right time is when they ask you the question, you answer it. That's, to me, the timing we're going for. The question is how do I actually get somebody to the point to ask me the question or seek me out when needed. Um, Matt, I think what you're working with Rekindle is to say positioning's not enough, right? To distinguish yourself simply as the unique is really just worrying about the color of the label instead of actually worrying about the content of the label, and knowing that label has really critical information beyond just like the splashy picture that tells you who the maker is.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to just like worry about, I've made this great landing page, everyone's going to come and land on it. You need to know what the question you want people to ask you is. You need to understand what it is, and then trying to make them feel like it's their idea, and how can they lead themselves there. And that takes some effort in talking to people, and for people who are a bit introspective, takes or not introverted, not in, and introspective maybe, but it definitely takes them getting out of their shell and thinking forwards.
Yeah, and it's to be approachable, I think, is really key to this process so that they know where to find you when the time comes. So I think one example we were talking about here, Matt, was like live events and
Yeah.
how dynamic the live events have been. You've been to some recently and just thought like it blew you away how amazing the conversion was happening in that space.
Yeah, because and partly there were more senior people there, like going where the grown-ups are. I'm sometimes guilty of being a bit of a snob for live events, thinking it's just filled with students and people are going to ask me really base questions. But trying to go to places where the buyers are, trying to go to places where people of your level are, so you can have the big conversations. Because there's all sorts of stuff that you don't know, and either it confirms what you do know, or it just adds extra layers and extra flavor upon what you do know.
Yeah, the opportunities I think that happens in live events too is that I feel like what would it be, like permission granted.
Mhm.
That fact that I'm sitting near the, I don't know, bowl of chips means like you have to do is walk up and also go to near the bowl of chips, and a dialogue is very obvious because you're just standing in front of me. So if I didn't want to have a conversation with you, I wouldn't be in that space. But if you are, then it's like the barriers are down. And so when we're looking for an opportunity to generate sales, to look for those areas of permission to show up, maybe to make human requests. Are you available for a coffee? Are you available how's how was soccer last week, whatever the thing is, so that the conversation begins on the human level. Then you can ask more strategic questions of, how did that project turn out for you? Did you find anybody to do that editorial? How did that DP work that I recommended? Are you now looking for the sound company, who we are, and I could sell you the sound, that conversational thing that has their needs and considerations in mind before you just dump into your own sales process.
Yeah, a client of mine works in the sports space, and it all is about being at the event and talking to people. He's finding that in the sports graphics work, it's a bit of a club, and you need to turn up. Hang on a sec, I'll be back in 1 sec.
No. What did Matt just? I don't know what happened. Yeah, I think that the opportunities, when we're growing our network too, that's where a lot of people are now asking me is like, how do I pivot into a new space and find new opportunities that I never had before? Specifically to people from outside of the US market trying to get in the US market. It can be very a big burden, a large wall to climb, because you don't have any real initial connection to begin the referral process. And for me, it's like, well, live events, like you don't have to be granted any permission to show up, just like go to Camp MoGraph, meet the people that are there, and let that begin your referral network.
Yeah.
I by the way, thank you for the question. We're always open for more questions too. If people have any other thoughts or techniques that they've seen, or even examples that they've come across that would be helpful for other people to process, I'd love to part of that. Hey, Ed.
You. Hi. I feel like a lot of the offensive stuff you hear is like, reach out to people. But I feel like I've never had great success with like cold emailing people. Just never felt like that has ever really like yielded anything. But more and more, I'm seeing there's a company right now that I think we could have a really great partnership with. They do we're like one half of a business and they kind of do the other half. And in instances like that, it's like how, you're not just necessarily asking for work, right? You're like, maybe there's a partnership here where we can both go get work by being complementary. I wonder if anyone has had more success cold outreaching that way, or if that feels less invasive than just give me a job, as sort of a sales tool almost. It's like we have access to each other's clients, maybe can go together to do stuff.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that would feel invasive as well.
No, I don't think so. Isn't it interesting if I were to give you something? Hey, Eb, I want to give you a client. Wouldn't you go nice to meet you? Of course, I'll take that call every time. Or you say I actually have a lot of clients like this. Should you and I go to coffee, and maybe I can figure out how I can direct my editorial clients into your sound design company. And all you have to do in the initial thing is give it away, right? Because then at coffee, when you're talking and you're saying, you say to them, you can ask, what more do you do? What more clients do you want? Who are your better clients? And as they're giving you those, they'll reciprocate and say, well, what if, by the way, I have a client like this. Would you want those back? Because it becomes very obvious as you're giving that the return comes right back. So yeah, I absolutely. That's a really great strategy, just to recognize who you complement and begin feeding them, or at least talking about feeding them, or being curious. Hey, I'm curious, if I had some of these, would that fit your need? And let that become the conversation. And then the strategy of passing the leads back and forth, because they might get leads sooner than you, or you get leads sooner than them. And you kind of create a little, team between you. That's awesome. I know sales reps that do that a lot.
Yeah, because this would be upstream from us a little bit. And they claim to kind of do what we do, but I mean, I would never say it, but it's not as good as we do it. And I think it's just because it's secondary to their business. So, without sort of saying hey, I know you guys are trying to do this, but you're not succeeding. It's I don't know, maybe there's some other partnership we can sort of have there, but was just wondering if people had gone that route at all.
Yeah, I definitely have seen the share. Other people can tell me too what they've seen where that's been helpful, but I definitely know design companies working with editorial companies working with sound companies,
Right.
motion design working like people in post working with live action companies. Like all those exchanges are you recognizing, well, we could feed things back and forth because leads come in and all of a sudden, like I have a lead and I don't do live action. I'm going to call Eb
Yeah.
and see if she has a director that could fit this need. I'll pitch their director onto this job so I can get the post.
Right.
Totally how it works.
Yeah, I feel like it's just another nice avenue to go that isn't just directly asking a future client, like, please give me work.
Yeah. And that begins the referral process too. And, you start building your network that way. So their net gets bigger, looking for better opportunities or more opportunities are coming that way. Easy way to break through to new areas as well. Yeah, that's excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, I've been trying to get
partner with Eb.
Sure.
Raise your hand, you wanna partner with Eb.
Yeah, if anyone wants, anyone wants to partner with us, we're really small and we do a very particular thing. So I think I really have never liked sales, and so I've been trying to think about it differently. And I feel like if you could think about where you are in the pipeline, we do like live action documentary type branded work. There's so much surrounding that we don't do. It would be nice to like be in a sort of a pipeline of people feeding it both ways.
Eb, you're also like, besides just the documentary work, you qualified it that way, but like you're strong on the storytelling. So somebody that's like good on the execution, visual effects company or something like that doesn't always touch story and they need storytelling. Like that could be part of it too, is technical execution and storytelling execution combined just as well as post and live action or something like that. So,
or like strategists sometimes will like do these research reports that are like, people like stories like this, and then they'll make them too, and you'll watch what they made and you're like, what you made is kind of like not as good because you're not a production company who knows how to take that and turn it into something compelling to watch. But the report they wrote is great and it's really what we want people to do. But we can do it to a certain extent, but not as deep as like a strategy agency or somebody who that's their bread and butter. So we would love that. And then, I mean, for us, like design animation, like we do a little bit of it, but that would open up a whole, we definitely have clients who want that at a very robust level and we don't really do that. So yeah, if anyone here does that as well, like we're always looking both. We're always looking both ways because again, we're small and we're niche and we do a very particular thing. But I think people are used to coming to production companies and saying like, do the whole thing. Because that's kind of, they're sort of become catch-alls for this work. We see a lot of it done really mediocre. I'd rather work with people who are like us and like saying like, we do this thing and we're really good at this thing. And then being able to sort of like package all that work together. So yeah, if anybody's on either side of that pipeline.
It's, by the way, it's why we have the help wanted section on community. So like you can actually just say to each other, hey, I have this client, we're looking for this, and let that help wanted section in community should be some more of that like cross-pollinating with each other. Yeah, it's a really great way to build a network. Good idea.
Lisa's put a comment up just saying that familiarity is also key in helping to increase response rates. For example, you're engaging with their content on social and they get an email from you or vice versa. It can pique their curiosity about who's this person reaching out, obviously without being spammy or weird or stalky, but you definitely need to know who you're talking to and what they do and understand who you're selling to rather than you're a business, you make stuff, I make stuff, let's make stuff. That'll just turn people right off.
And I don't know how about you guys feel, but like there's a certain reward where there's somebody that you would love to connect with, and before you go through the process or feel like you're ready or whatever, they reach out to you first. You almost feel like, oh, that's a good day. That's such a good day. And so you almost wonder like, how did I do that? What do I need to do again? Where do I find that stuff? The power of attraction or whatever that is that can make that happen. But like if it works well for you, it's going to work well for others. So that's where like, don't be shy to feel like if there's some relevant connection, be genuine. Don't just try to boost your numbers for no reason. That's just dumb. But if there's something that's relevant or market you want to get into, and you're willing to have the investment of a conversation to find out more, to do some research, hear other people, those are really great ways of using social platforms and begin those conversations. That's why I often put thought leadership out there first, to see like who kind of comes forward and likes or hits something, because if they like what I'm saying, I like what I'm saying. I talk about this stuff all the time. Then like most likely we're going to have a lot in common, and that kind of gets that network down to like relevant group of people.
Yeah, I have a client who hated sales, and he was like, I've been trying to get him to contact this one digital bank that had cool 80s graphics and used a lot of animation. I'm like, Cam, they're perfect for you. And he just wouldn't contact if he knew who they were. And then he was walking his dog one night and he realized that the marketing manager lived 5 doors up from him and was walking their dog. And he said, "You're not that guy, are you?" And I am. And then they actually had this conversation. And after me goading him for talking to him for 4 months, I think he finally went, "Hey, you won't believe what I did. Turns out our kids go to school together," and blah, 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 blah. It was awesome.
That's
What are
pretty
some
cool.
good,
I love that.
what are some practical tips, Tim, for people who don't like reaching out to people to reach out differently?
Yeah. So I think the things we've said so far, I'll just repeat those at least, is like be available, right? So make yourself available. That means go to events or talk about things that are relevant. Put yourself out there, accept the comments. Someone comments on something you say, comment back. Like just really simple stuff of being available, so that the lead or the curiosity of who you are, how I can work with you, you've given me a channel task, so that it doesn't feel weird. The next step above that is become familiar. Actually know what someone's looking for, know who they work for, know what kind of work that they're doing. Be curious about people, be curious about the work, be curious about the company, how they make decisions. Those are all just strategic, really good, smart analysis you can do before you just jump into it. Like, it's a little bit silly that people would reach out to me and not even know what I'm doing. I feel like, oh, you're just literally just trying to get numbers or trying to get inside my network. That doesn't feel right. I don't like that. And then I'd say, like, get past the transactional, become relational. Like I said before, like, stop people from just saying transactional stuff, and feel free to say back to them, like, first of all, how are you? Like, or how did that go? Or, hey, of course, thank you for the opportunity. By the way, I saw what you did during the Super Bowl. That spot was amazing. And give them a compliment, so that you are being relational with the transactional. I'm going to say, like, they're more likely to respond, even if it's like, hey, I don't know the answer to that yet. The client hasn't given us a response because they're ghosting us. That's why I'm ghosting you. But yeah, I can keep up the other part of the conversation, the relational part of the conversation. And that genuine opportunity just allows for that breakdown of just simply like, well, if there's nothing transactional to say, I'm not going to say anything back. I think that kind of hurts. And then lastly, like, don't expect the ball to be returned to you anymore. So be specific, be driven. Kind of like, I don't want to say, I like persistence, but I don't mean it in an aggressive way. I just mean it in a curiosity way of just knowing the kind of work you like to do, the kind of people you want to work with, and follow them, guide them, repost their stuff. I don't know, just things that, like, you can be persistent and give things away before you take. To me, those are really great. And then last, what Eb said is awesome. Find some smart people to collaborate with. Give your stuff away to other people that could benefit, and they will give things back to you. That's a really great way to start getting referrals. Break down walls immediately, because you're using relationships to get those referrals, and you can kind of grow and expand your network that way. That's a pretty good list.
That's good tips.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to copy that the transcript and post it somewhere. I think that's might be the first time I've actually processed all of that together in one spot.
Oh, Doug's got his hand up.
Doug. What do you got, Doug?
I got one more question. You said,
Sure.
moving from, tell me if I'm wrong, transactional to relational. What if I flip the script on you? I have a relationship with a client that's longstanding. I've been working with one of their senior executives. And part of the job of a coach is to work yourself out of a job. In other words,
Yeah.
you bring this person to a level and then you sort of move away. And I'm at this point with them, with this one person on this staff. And I know from what he's told me and what the owner of the company has told me, that there are other people who could use that service. How do my service in particular,
Yeah.
at least hope, how do I don't want to be overly aggressive because I'm not that kind of person, believe it or not, but I'm just not sure how to approach the owner as to say, hey, are there other people? Do I ask simply? Do I
Yeah.
say, look at the success I had with so and so? You're very happy with that. Can I work with other people? So I'm just curious what your thoughts are to move from the relational, which is established, to a further transaction.
Yeah, to a referral. It's funny because so I a few months ago I went to dinner with Blair Enns, and he and I were talking. We were joking about how difficult it is to ask somebody for a referral, and it's funny because both looking at each other, I would not expect. You would think Blair could say like, "Hey, tell somebody I wrote this book." I don't know. Like he seems very legitimate. It shouldn't be very hard. But when it's inside out, right? When it's you're the one asking for the referral, you just feel that way. Like this seems very weird. But on the outside, like it's not true. It's actually how things work. So the answer really truly is like you just kind of have to ask. And to go from relational, right, to referral, they often do want to do those referrals. Um, so yeah, that's it. But all of us, Doug, every one of us, everyone here could probably raise their hand. So like, no, that's really weird feeling and very hard to say, like, can you just recommend me to somebody? I don't think any of us can get past the imposter syndrome moment to really feel comfortable that way. You mostly have to be trained or put it into practice. If anyone has any successful way of doing that, please let us know, because I think most of us feel a little bit of awkward
I
in
think
that moment.
you need to explain why it's important. And I think if you can say, you know, well, you're a well-reputed person and I need to do new things, and you know, like I actually go beyond just that, would you write this thing for me, but explain to them why you want to work with more people like that, or why their opinion or their word really matters. I had to ask a famous film director to write a letter for me, and it was really breaking down what that letter meant, what that would mean to other people. And you know, it did feel slightly obvious, but it also is, it's again going back to that human respect of taking the time of explaining what's so special about this person, what's so special about their permission or their authority that would make a difference, and what difference that would make to you.
Yeah, it really is like, at least I'm saying this too, like there's a specific nature too. If you were asking for something, could you refer me, or could you, this specific person, or recommend me for this job or whatever, those are really a much easier ask too, because every one of us has a sense of ego of like, yeah, I would love to help you in such a way, and know that my network is successful for that way, and to build you up, and give you the opportunity. I think that we all have at least a sense of cause and purpose that does it, and sometimes just, again, basic ego that says, yeah, I'm big enough, I can ask any of my friends for a job, for, you know, like, and kind of put that stuff out there. So there's some really good transaction in that. Hey, before everyone leaves, I just, for those of you listening, you have to be asleep to not see all the comments that are happening in the small group post that we put out there. But small groups have started. They're actually kicking off tomorrow. I see Brendan here. His group starts first tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific. Mine's at 9 o'clock Pacific. And then his group starts on Tuesday, next Tuesday at 9 o'clock Pacific. But these small groups are great. They're a great chance to have conversations like this, to meet new people. This is like the showing up part, right? Just have a conversation, meet people who are in the same field, feel how you can collaborate. We're going to practice things together. It's really great for accountability. We're going to read books. It's just a small group. There's no major commitment, no homework done, nothing like that, but just to kind of know you're part of a network and being supported. If you're not in one right now and you want to be in one, please just go to revthink.com/confab, or make a comment on RevCommunity in that post, or just DM me, tim@revthink.com. Anything that I can do to help you sign up for one. I can even recommend the right group for you. But it's the easiest, best resource we have at RevThink inside a community to get people plugged in and build each other up. So please find one. They're really important and really good for this weird job that we've all chosen to put ourselves out there as creative entrepreneurs, to take on the burden, to get past the imposter syndrome, all these things that we need other people for. So feel free to join one of those or reach out and I can give you some recommendations. Matt, thank you for being part of this conversation today. As always, it's great to have you, and hope you kind of help me kind of like step up to the challenge. I'm looking forward to Rekindle after all the work we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. It's going to be great when we roll that out.
Totally. I'm looking forward to mastering these questions. Yeah. Thank you
those
everyone
of you going
for
to Camp
joining in.
MoGraph, yeah, if you go to Camp MoGraph this week, have a great weekend at Camp MoGraph, and say hi to my kid, Seamus. He's the one that sounds like me. So if you hear a laugh like mine, you know that's my kid. But otherwise, we all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Wednesday for the weekly briefing. Thanks, Matt.
All right. See you later.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.